What is going on, Snooker fans, and welcome to the final Snooker Digest episode of 2025, where we'll be looking at last week's Scottish Open, the final tournament of this calendar year. And this is a tournament that I always feel really bad for, actually, because it takes place at this time of year, every single year, the last week leading up to Christmas. And I do feel like the majority of snooker fans sort of check out for the year once the UK Championship finishes, because, it's December and we have Christmas and festivities to get prepared for. And I do think it's a real shame that this is the tournament always to take this particular hit, because Scotland deserves a little bit better, really. It's the only tournament the country hosts in a season, a country that has given us modern day greats like Stephen Hendry and John Higgins. And it also takes place in Edinburgh, which is such a gorgeous city to visit too. And it unfortunately does just drift under the radar because of the time of year. And a lot of the time as well, you get several top players drop out because of how close it is to Christmas. And even for me, a bit of a self-professed die-hard snooker fan, only really dipped in and out of the tournament last week, and I missed the semi-finals entirely. So maybe it is about time we got justice for this event. But someone who won't be caring a dot about that is Chris Wakelin, technically now a 2-time ranking event winner. But let's be honest, this is his first proper title. And I will highlight this prediction from one of my most loyal subscribers, who not only predicted Wakelin to land a first title this season, but he also got Lazowski winning one correct as well. So 2026 must surely be the year that Sisha Wee gets to the winner's circle as well. And this is a tournament win that has been some time in the making. Chris had become one of the most consistent players in the world in 2024, which earned him a top 16 seeding for last year's UK Championship and in the Masters as well at the start of this year. He did drop off a little bit in the second half of last season, but finished off by not only qualifying for the World Championship, but then beat Neil Robertson and Mark Allen to reach the quarterfinals. And he's brought that into the new season as well, getting to the semi-finals in Saudi Arabia before finally picking up the title last week in Scotland. And it's a tournament that has served Chris very well, having reached the quarterfinals there in 2023 and 2024 before then winning it this year. And Chris does have all of the facets of being a player that can stick either in or around the top 16 for a long, long time. He is solid in all departments of the game and always appears to have a very strong temperament as well. At 33 years of age, he also has plenty of time on his hands, as this sport seems to lend itself best to those in their 30s and 40s now. The only sort of frustrating thing for Chris will be that this win has taken him back into the top 16. However, because it's after the Masters cutoff, it's too late for him to make an appearance at Ali Pali. Well, unless of course O'Sullivan drops out again. The good news is though that he has the chance to try and hold on to a crucible seeding in the second half of the season, and he is the type of player that will have deep runs in tournaments fairly regularly, so I would expect him to have a good chance of doing just that and guaranteeing himself at a spot for the World Championship in a few months' time. And the tournament also gave us our lowest ranked player to reach a final this season in Chang Bingyu. Fresh off the back of making a 147 in the UK Championship qualifying against Stephen Maguire, Chang went on to beat Stephen Maguire, Sijia Wee, Kyle Wilson, the in-form Mark Selby, and then Mark Allen in the semi-finals to make it to his first ever final. In fact, he had never been to a quarter-final before last week, and he scored a very impressive 11 centuries along the way as well. Now, there is obviously a fairly large elephant in the room when it comes to Chang, who received a 2-year ban for match fixing during that massive scandal that came out in 2023. So a question will likely have been asked about how snooker fans would have felt seeing a match fixer become a tournament winner just 3 years after the match in which that incident occurred in. The same question, of course, got posed to Zhao Xingtong when he won the World Championship, and I did for the most part defend him, as Zhao didn't actually directly get involved in match fixing, but rather placed bets on matches he knew to be fixed. Now, not condoning that behaviour at all, but it is a far cry from fixing a match yourself. But with Chang, I don't know how the snooker community would have reacted in general. His defence was one of duress, claiming Liang Wenbo had pressured him into fixing that match, and he did then plead guilty at the earliest opportunity when this all came out. And I do think in general, it is just a massive shame that players involved in that scandal, whether willingly or through duress, will now have their name forever tainted in this sport. Whether you think that is appropriate or not will be subjective to you, I suppose. And it is even sadder when you see just how much potential these players have. Like I say, making 11 centuries in a tournament and beating the players that he beat in any other circumstance, we would be applauding him for what we saw from him last week, even despite getting a hammering in the final. So is there a world where we can judge the man for his previous actions, but still give praise for his on-table performances last week? I'm not sure, but from what I saw from the lad, which were mainly his performances against Mark Selby and Kyron Wilson, he looked to have his cue ball on a string most of the time. But it is now the age-old question of, was this performance just a flash in the pan, or is this the beginning of a promising career for another Chinese youngster? And then some other players to finish off the year strongly included Mark Allen and Matt Selt, who reached the semi-finals. And when it did get to the weekend, you would probably have suspected that it would have been Allen who would take home the trophy. Selt's run also comes after having practice sessions with John Higgins in the lead up to the tournament. And he is a player who I think, we should be seeing him in these positions more often than he is. He does have it in him. He gets to finals. He gets to quarterfinals and semi-finals. But I think he can do it on a more regular basis than sort of every 18 months or so. Now, whether the majority of snooker fans would agree with that assessment, I'm not so sure. Obviously, he's heavily the pantomime villain in the snooker tour, along with sort of Ali Carter. Not many people warm to him, and he does a lot of things on the table which doesn't help his case. But yet, as a player, he is more talented than I think from what we see from him. And these performances, like I say, I do think for him need to happen on a more regular basis. Zhao Yulong also made it to the quarterfinals again this season, but again just fell short in his ongoing bid to become a first-time tournament winner. But the promising signs are still there though, and I kept saying it about Jack Lazowski, and I'll say it again about Zhao. If he can keep putting himself into these positions, at some point it will all come together, I'm sure of it. And on that note, all that remains is for me to wish you all a very Merry Christmas. I hope Santa treats you to some nice new Stephen Hendry merchandise, and I'll catch you all on the next video.